Todd McShay is here. I hope you've been listening to the McShay Show, which we've had on the Ringer for the last couple months during a very action-packed college football season. Lots to get to. First of all, welcome to the Ringer. Belatedly, great to have you on the pod.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. I appreciate it. Appreciate you, your support in all of it, and we're having a good time. It's been a whole different world, right? Like I didn't know anything about this world, but we've enjoyed it, and now we're kind of turning the page. We got the NFL playoffs and then the NFL draft, and so we're kind of hitting our sweet spot.
Well, I have a vested interest in this draft, which we'll get to later. Did the right team win the college football championship?
Yeah, they did. And it's what's wild too is like all the complaints about the 12-team playoff and all the adjustments we have to make, and the seating's a mess, and it should never be conference champions. But at the end of the day, Ohio State wouldn't have been in it in the previous, 4-team playoff structure. And Ohio State was clearly the best team. And it took them going on a run. The Michigan loss is a Michigan thing for Ohio State. It's not reflective of the program and what they are. I mean, that's almost a headspace that they're going to have to deal with. But that was the best team. And it was, everyone talked about, well, they bought a $20 million roster. Well, they just used a lot of that $20 million to keep the guys there that were there on the defensive side. And yeah, they added a running back in Quinshad Judkins, and their quarterback, Will Howard, was a really good fit for what they do. But ultimately, the vast majority of that team was there, and they just kept a lot of guys from going to the NFL and having to take pay cuts to do so.
Right. Wait, you were one of the rare college and NFL guys. Russillo's like this too. There's a few of them. Gun to your head, which one do you like more? Like if you could only be stuck with one for the rest of your life, which one would you pick?
Gun to head, I would say college football.
Why college football? What is it?
I guess I grew up on it. Like my grandfather worked with Bo Schembechler, and I like going out. I grew up in Boston, outside of Boston, Swampscott, small town north of Boston. But he lived in Ohio and helped the recruiting area of Northeast Ohio. And so I was around that Michigan program and kind of just understood, like, you always hear like the pageantry, but it's like just how important that is. And it was weird growing up here, right? Because like it's all pro sports here in New England, all pro sports,
except for the one flutie run. We had that little flutie intersection, exactly. And that was about it for college football.
Right, and so just being around that, I kind of was introduced to something that was different than what we grew up around, living in this area. So I don't know. I just have always loved like going to games and the tailgating and how important it is, and the flags flying as you're driving through a town, and the crowd and the atmosphere. It's just home to me. It really is. But the personnel part, like I became obsessed with in my 20s when I started in this business, just evaluating, all right, which of these guys can actually go play at the next level, and building a roster. So that's kind of how it all developed for me.
Well, so last year we had these 3 quarterbacks, and it was so much fun to talk about them. And everybody kind of agreed, ceiling-wise, Caleb has to be first. That was like what everybody came away with. This guy, he's Mahomes-ish. There's some leadership stuff, potentially. There's some immaturity stuff. But he's got to be the pick. And yet there were some other people who were like, check May's little Josh Allen. And then Jaden Daniels was the other one. And the reason people seem to be down on Daniels was the frame. Mm-hmm. Could he be durable enough? Could he handle it? But then everybody was pointing to last year and saying, this guy was amazing last year. Like, if this guy can do in the pros what he did in college, this guy is going to be an amazing quarterback, and durability is question. Did this exceed what you even thought? Like, whatever you had as a ceiling for Daniels coming in, what's happened this year? Did you see any version of this happening?
Not this version, man. I mean, I'll go back to what I said last year before the draft. If you're dropped on this planet and you could only base your evaluation off of 1 year of tape, like the 2023 season, Jaden Daniels was clearly the better prospect, right?
Yeah.
But throughout the process, there was Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, which was kind of this running around backyard football, all about his legs. Occasionally he'd pop a pass down the field. And then he got to LSU. And even early on there, like I remember being on the field with Brian Kelly before the Tennessee game, okay? And Tennessee came in, big favorites, and they wound up blowing out LSU in that game. But I remember being on the field with him and watching Jaden and having watched his tape and just saying, like, what do you see in practice that I'm not seeing? Because it looks like he can make all the throws, but he just doesn't seem to trust it. And the anticipation isn't there and all that. And he said, watch the first play of this game. Just watch, because we're forcing him to make this throw. I'm not going to tell you where it's going, but we're going to force him to make this throw because we're trying to prove to him that if you just trust your read and your eyes and you get the ball out on time, you're special. Like, you're different than anything we've been around or seen. And so the first play of the game comes, and of course I'm on the sideline, like peeking over, and it's a deep comeback route to the left side, and he gets back top of his drop and just rips it. And if it gets picked, it's a pick six. And at that point, he hadn't thrown an interception. And everyone in the local media was just, oh, this Jaden Daniels is great. He hasn't thrown an interception through 5 games. How good has he been? And Brian's point was, like, I can't wait for him to throw an interception. Like, it's driving me fucking crazy. Right. The media is talking about the interception thing, but the reason he's not trusting is he's so concerned about throwing a pick. So anyway, ball comes out, perfect throw, right on time, completion. And you saw it there, like that was like the first step in his confidence of, like, you know what? If I trust what I'm seeing and my instincts, I can build from here. And he just kept getting better. And then the following season was 2023, and he just took off.
It's funny that I'm in my mid-50s now, and it still doesn't feel like we've figured out evaluation of, like, the best basketball prospects, quarterbacks. Right. I think when we get to, like Abdul Carter pass rushers, we have a pretty good sense of, like, yeah, this guy's probably going to come in and be really good. But the quarterback thing, so much of it seems to depend on situation, what your college experience was, where you're going into, who your coach is when you get there the first couple of years. And I think of, like, the situation Daniels was in versus what Drake May was in, where he's like F- offensive line, no receivers, the worst coaches possible. And he's just running for his life for 4 quarters. And then Daniels, who had kind of an overqualified offensive coordinator, a good head coach, a lot of veterans around him, a team that trusted him. He had 5 years in college, and all that led to, like, something really good. But then he got hurt, 5 weeks, 6 weeks in, he took a hit. Didn't seem like he was the same for 5. And it's like, well, this is why we were a little nervous. Could his body hold up? Now I'm thinking about picking them to beat the Eagles. And he looks that good compared to what we're watching. And I want to talk to you about what's going on with Hurts too. But it does feel realistic that he could just win 3 straight playoff games in a row. And I don't, like, for a rookie quarterback to do that, is that inconceivable to you?
It is inconceivable because history says it doesn't, like, it's almost impossible to happen, right?
Right.
Like, what he's doing now, Bill, it's so far beyond what you can, that you're allowed to expect from a rookie quarterback. Like, I went back and looked, right? Like, no rookie quarterback has ever led his team to a Super Bowl, right?
Right.
There have been 5 others who have led their team to a conference championship. And I want to rip off these names for you. Sean King.
Yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger. And I want you to think back, like, when they actually were rookies. Like,
it was game manager Ben Roethlisberger.
Correct. Joe Flacco, same deal. Mark Sanchez, Brock Purdy. Now I want you to think about what we just saw last week. And then there's a whole other list of guys in their second year. 6 of them since 2000 have in their second year as quarterbacks have led their teams to a Super Bowl. Brady, Roethlisberger, Kaepernick, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, and Purdy. I would say of that group, Burrow probably carried more of the offensive load on his shoulders than any of those other guys. I mean, Brady back then, we were protecting Brady. It was all
Brady wasn't close to Brady in 2001. No.
And so then you think about what Jaden's doing, and under pressure, and not just beating the pressure with his legs, but with his arm. And then you think about, like, the vast majority of the run plays too. I think this kind of goes unnoticed in the NFL with how quick the defenses are and how fast the action of play is. He's having to make reads in the run game too, with his own read option and all the possibilities there. So every snap, he is making decisions that a rookie quarterback usually doesn't have to have that much load put on them. And he's doing it at such a ridiculous level. That's why this is by far, I think by far in my lifetime, the best rookie quarterback performance I've ever seen. And CJ Stroud, it was awesome, but this is different, man. And the supporting cast is not to the level that it should be for a rookie quarterback to have this success. And honestly, I like Washington. I'm going to go with them.
I think I am too.
I think something special's happening. And here's the weird part. I trust him more than I trust Jalen Hurts.
So I have this playoff manifesto with all these rules. And one of the rules is you really got to look at the quarterbacks. Look at both sides. Imagine betting on the game and just going down the 4 quarters with each guy. And I want to talk about Hurts in a second because the stuff that's going on with him is alarming. And there were some really good videos and pieces about it in the last week. The Daniels piece, you listed, we talked about this last week on my pod, just like the Brady 2001 and Mahomes, his first full year. And I think the Mahomes, his first full year is the only real comparison that I can remember.
Yep.
I honestly, with Marino, who was amazing, but we in the mid 80s, he was probably on TV 3 times where we had football. I can't say I was like a Dan Marino expert. He would play the Pats or the Jets, and you would get one of those games maybe.
Yep.
But Mahomes, we were there for, and he was good enough to win the Super Bowl that year, and they got really lucky. Like the D Ford's jumped off sides, or Brady throws an interception, the Pats lose that game. Mahomes would have gone to the Super Bowl that year. Burrow's another one that I think felt like he was arrived and ready to go, and he was going to be in our lives for the next 15 years. And I just think Daniels hit that point even before the Detroit game. It was just clear he was going to be in our lives. The part that was amazing to me is that it felt like Detroit could have run for 10 yards a carry. I'm sure they're looking at the tape going, how did we lose that game?
Yeah.
How did we ever not score a touchdown every time we had the ball? So now I look at Philly and it's like, all right, are they just going to rush for 300 yards? Maybe Hurts doesn't have to do anything. But I don't like trusting QBs who are playing like shit. And he's playing like shit.
He is. It's going to be interesting. Like, I don't want to go too deep in the mud, but like,
please do. We're here to go in the mud.
Philly lives on first down running the football.
Yeah.
I think I've read like 71% of the time on first down, they've run the football in the postseason. And it was damn near that close in the regular season. It's all about staying on schedule. And I think in part because they don't trust their quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're in they're 1 for 11 on third down conversions in the postseason when it's 3rd and 7 or longer. What does that tell you? You know what I mean?
How about the explosive plays he's missed in the 2 games?
Yes.
Where he's had AJ open deep and just like either threw it out of bounds or was late on the throw. That safety he took against the Rams in the second half was one of the worst quarterback plays of the year. It was unbelievable that happened. That's what would happen if it's like somebody who's replacing Deshaun Watson on the Browns, like that kind of level quarterback. It's not, this Jalen Hurts has been to a Super Bowl. Like the one thing, and the other time when he knocked him out of field goal range because he took a sack. Like this is like basic QB shit. Like don't make your situation worse. Like just get out of it. He can't even seem to do that. So, and I think the Eagle fans are really aware of it, but also feel like they can rush for 330 yards on Sunday.
Right. And they could. I mean, they could. But I also like Washington has gotten to the point where they're one of the top teams in the NFL the last like second half of the season and in the postseason with a run blitz on first down. So like it could become a war of, all right, when does Philly take a chance, play action first down, and can Jalen cash in?
Yeah.
And again, if you're betting on Jalen, is that the bet you want to make?
Well, so if you're making the case for Washington, and I think I'm going to make it when I do $1 million picks.
What's the spread in that game, by the way? Is it 8?
Up to 6.5. Yeah. And it'll probably be 7. Who knows? But you figure it'd be the same recipe that did it against Detroit, where each side's going to have 7 possessions. We're going to take our time. We're going to move the ball down the field. Every 4th and 2, 4th and 3, we're going for it. We're going to complete 70% of our passes. The clock's going to be moving. We'll hang around. Maybe we're up 10-7 in the second quarter. Philly has a turnover. Now we have the ball again. Now it's 17-7, 13. Now Hurts has to start making plays.
Right.
And that's their scenario to win the game, which is very similar to the Detroit scenario. The Eagles scenario is just, we're up 10-0. We're running the ball. We're chewing up clock. Daniels comes out. We get like one stop. We rush through the middle. And now all of a sudden it's 13-0. And now we can just run the ball, play action. We're home. So I see the 2 sides. I just feel more comfortable with the Daniels side.
Yeah, especially with that number, And
Yeah, because it feels like either team can win the game. So if that's the case,
correct.
I'd rather just take the 6.5.
I'd love to see Washington jump them early.
Yeah.
You know, a quick strike early in the game, kind of knock Philly back on its heels. Yeah, I just think momentum's crazy. Confidence is so much of this, and we've lived through it our whole lifetime. Like when teams get on a run, forget the seeds, forget the Vegas spreads. Like there's something about that momentum and like the belief in what we're doing, and it just feels like Washington has that. Now, again, they could walk into a buzzsaw. Philly gets out and has a big play early on, and now they can run the football and they get a lead. But I don't know. Something special is happening in Washington, and I don't want to be on the other side of it anymore.
Well, were you in Massachusetts during the 0-1 Pats run?
0-1.
The first Super Bowl.
Yes, I just moved back from New York. I lived in New York. I went to school in Richmond, lived in New York for 2 years. I came back just, honestly, I think 5-6 months before. So I was there for the whole run.
Yeah, it felt like, and it was a little similar where it was an out-of-nowhere thing. It seemed improbable. They were big underdogs each. I mean, they were even bigger underdogs than Washington is. And the snow game was the one that officially flipped the narrative. It's like, wait, what's going on here? And then they went into Pittsburgh. They got, a couple special teams plays. There was some Pittsburgh turnovers, and it was just chip on their shoulder. The only people that believe in us are in this locker room. And Washington definitely has some of that. I think the difference is Daniels is just way ahead of where Brady was. Brady, game manager, really smart, didn't turn the ball over, but he wasn't really Brady until I think 2005-06 range when they really started leaning on him.
Yep.
This Daniels thing to lean on a rookie where he's basically the offense is hinging on him. It's pretty unusual. I will say though, Eckler being back and them having 2 running backs now, and just those, like, it just feels like they can run the ball a little bit.
And Eckler looked like he had juice, right?
Yeah, no question.
Like a couple years ago, like when he was in his, I don't want to say prime, but when he was at his peak, a couple of his runs, I was like, oh shit, like Eckler's back.
Right. Well, we were talking last week when we were on the show and we were trying to figure out, could Washington win this game? They had a really weird season where they looked really good the first few weeks. Then Daniels got hurt. They had a couple injuries. They had the Hail Mary game was lucky. Yeah. And they kind of weren't stumbling through the middle of the season, but they looked like totally they were like a rabbit team, the team that looks good for the first 2.5 months. But then the last month of the season, they kind of went back to where they were in September. And then it just kept going and going and going. So you could think that. You could also think they easily could have lost to Tampa if Tampa just converts a 2nd and 1 and makes 3 more plays and is up 4 with 2 minutes left. But I'm with you. Like sometimes with football, you get this momentum that's going. I guess the question for me in the other conference is, does Buffalo have that too? Where Buffalo has had, like, the turnover stats with them are nuts, where they've never had a game where they've had more turnovers than the other team the whole season. Everyone else who's done that has won the Super Bowl. The game last week, they just have a habit of the other team just shoots themselves in the foot as they're playing them. So I wonder, like, maybe it could be a Buffalo Washington. Yeah, you should have seen this all along. This is what we've done all year. Why didn't you believe in us?
The Josh Allen thing, like, it's his time.
You're going there? Because I think I'm picking KC.
Good. I want everyone else to. And you know what? Like it's kind of like when your mom says to your kid, like, how many times are you gonna burn your hand on the stove? Like how many times?
Yeah.
Like, you have and as life went on, like I think I've come to realize, like, I'm gonna be the one who's gonna burn my hand more.
Going against the Chiefs, you mean?
Yeah, and so maybe it's a me thing, but I don't know. Here's the tangible thing that I think is different is the turnover aspect for Josh Allen. I talked about this with our guy Ryan Russillo.
Yeah.
Right after it happened. What was it? Week 11? Was it Kansas City, Buffalo?
Right. 30-21, they beat them.
I remember watching that game and waiting to see, because they were up 4. Buffalo was up 4. It's like every time an opponent has a lead over Kansas City in the fourth quarter, there's always like that middle of the fourth quarter or like a little bit past the midpoint of the fourth quarter, they get a drive. The opponent does. And there's some level of conservative play, whether it's playing for a field goal whether it's dialing it back, not being aggressive. The mentality has to be, we're down 4. And that's what Buffalo did. It was remember, they've lost 3 games to them in the playoffs. They've found ways to lose. They've had games pulled away from them, all of it. I saw the kind of the switch in the mentality in that week 11 game where, all right, we've got the ball. I forget exactly when they got it, maybe like 6-7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They're down by 4. But if you didn't know the score, you'd say, oh, they're up by 4. But if you didn't know the score, you would have said they're down by 4 points in this game. Because it's not by 3. No, they're down by 4 is the mentality they had because they had to score a touchdown. And they drove the field. They went forward on 4th downs. They were aggressive the entire time. And they put the game away. Because what teams do all the time in that fourth quarter drive is they take for granted. Like it's assumed. It absolutely has to be assumed that when Mahomes gets the ball, they're going to, doesn't matter how much time's left, they're going to score and they're going to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
So if you play with that math, and it was important for that game, but I also think it showed that the Bills get it. They get that we can't turn the ball over. We can't give them extra possessions. And in the fourth quarter, we are full steam ahead, most important drive to save our season, even if we have a lead. And I just think the way Josh is playing, I think we're witnessing the best of Josh Allen in this moment. And the best of one of the most talented players to ever play the position has got to be good enough eventually, right? And
Are there Manning Brady mid-2000s parallels for you with this? When it seemed like Manning couldn't get over the hump against the Pats and then finally was able to do it in the AFC title game after had a regular season win, but then he had to do it in the playoffs, and he finally did it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it's impossible to say I'm confident or I have any confidence in it with Mahomes, and we know what they do. And like every good organization, they get their quarterback and they have drafted defense after defense after defense. And if you put a great defense on the field, which is what has been Brett Veach, their GM, and Andy Reid, their philosophy, like the second they got Mahomes and realized he was the guy, if you go back and study their drafts, it's like 4 of the first 6 picks defense, 3 of the first 4, 5 of the first 7, 6 in a row defense. And they've loaded up on that side because the quarterback's going to take care of all the problems on the offensive side.
Yeah.
So we got to have a great defense because we don't have a fixer on that side. And so that's how they've built this whole thing. And so, but I look at Buffalo, and Buffalo, like defensively, they're not as great as Kansas City is, but they've done a lot of the same things. They've sacrificed their offensive playmakers for their defensive talent. I think they're better up front in the defense than they maybe have been in previous matchups. I don't know. I think it's their time.
So I was thinking about, I should have said this on the pod we did Sunday night after the game. I blew it. There was 93 seconds left when they went for the 2-point. And if Andrews catches it, it's 27-27. And we left the game going, oh my God, he dropped it. He blew the game for them. Josh would have the ball with like enough time to go 40, 45 yards and set up some sort of field goal. And I almost wonder if that would have been a better outcome for the Bills as we think about the game going forward. Like, instead of how they won it, where the narrative after the game becomes, oh my God, Baltimore, Lamar, he didn't come through in the first half, and Andrews fumble and drops the 2. And it was like, Baltimore blew it. If Allen had just come down and gotten the game-winning field goal or whatever in those last 93 seconds, I feel like we'd be talking about this Chiefs game differently. And by the way, he probably would have.
Yeah, but I think Buffalo almost wants it that way, right?
Right. They do seem like they're a chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
They were doing a lot of nobody believed in us. I think they knew what the line was.
Yeah.
I thought Baltimore was the best team in the league, and I still kind of feel that way. Like, I don't regret picking them last week. They lost, but I just thought they were really good, and all the errors were self-inflicted. The punch out on the Andrews fumble was a great play by Buffalo.
Yep, that was.
The 2 mistakes in the first half by Lamar were terrible plays by him.
Yeah.
Like, really, plays and you can't make.
He's good for those in these moments. That's been the problem.
That's been the problem.
That has been the problem.
And for Allen, it's fun when a quarterback gets to this point. And we've seen it throughout the course of history where he kind of has to win this year.
He has to win this game.
Like, this is like the season. This happens in basketball too. You have a season where a lot of stuff align. This is it. I just really like the Chiefs. I still think they're really good. I don't feel like with the team that they were in the first 12, 13 weeks, I think they've solved some of those issues. They're a little more explosive than they were in September, October, November. They can run the ball a little better. I still believe in them at home. I just think they're being so hard to beat.
Kelce's the whole deal. Kelce's
Totally.
the whole deal. He's the whole deal in this game. If you go back and look, like he clearly has not been the player this year that he has been in the past.
Yeah.
But you go back and look at those wins, the 3 times that the Chiefs have beaten the Bills. He's averaged 9 catches per game, 96 yards, and almost two touchdowns in those 3 games, right? The Week 11 game that we were talking to, I want to say he had 2 catches for 8 yards.
Well, they keep him in the garage during the regular season now.
No, I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
They put the cover over him. They put him in the heated garage with,
especially this year when he is not. And I took a lot of heat for it, but I know him, right? Like, he was not in the shape that he's been in a lot of other years. It just wasn't there. So they were getting him to this point. Had an awesome game with 117 right last week. So Terrell Bernard did an amazing job in coverage on him. So that's going to be the matchup you want to watch in this game. The linebacker for the Bills, the first time around. He also had the interception in that game.
But they have some secondary issues this game. There's some guys who may not play, and their secondary was already not incredible to begin with.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me, because when Mahomes gets in these games and these types of situations, like, it's cute that we've got a burner and Xavier Worthy's here.
Yeah.
And we, like all these other bells and whistles and all the things we want. But he's going to rely on himself and Travis. I mean, it's been proven. And so he would rather extend the play and dance around and do some things and wait for Kelce to find a soft spot versus in those moments, in the big moments, if you really watch, like, he'll turn down opportunities with other guys and say, I can create a little longer. I'm going to wait for Travis because we have to. When he has to have it, that's what he tends to do. So I think Kelce is going to be the key to this game. And I know it's not breaking news, but like I think we kind of got lulled to sleep. Well, they're winning games, and Travis hasn't been huge this year. But they
wanted 3 games from him. That was it. I think that was the deal before the season. Are you going to be ready for the 3 games at the end of the season?
Yeah.
Are you going to be a 9 for 99 with a touchdown each game? All right. My guy, Drake May. I know you've been watching him. I just got to shoehorn, just because you're here, I got to shoehorn 3 minutes of content. So I'm on a lot of Pat's text threads. And we watched what happened with Washington this year, where very similar to the Pats right now, where they drafted the franchise QB. They brought in a new coach. They brought in new leadership. They made a bunch of smart free agent signings. They did well in the draft. And they just basically patched together a playoff team that now has a legitimate chance to make the Super Bowl, and it'll happen in a year. The Pats, they have May. So you think of last year's May season as like Daniels at LSU, basically. Like that kind of same thing. Now he's going to have his first real season, hopefully, on a real professional team. Easy schedule. They have a ton of cap space.
The most in the league.
I assume they're going to spend money. The Crafts really haven't spent money the last 10 years, but we'll see if they do it this year. 4th pick in the draft. Top of every draft going down. They have 2 third-round picks. Like, why can't this be them next year? What are the reasons that can't happen?
I mean, what Jaden has done is unbelievably unique and special, but it's Drake's 2nd year, and he has shown he's different. That last year's quarterback class, man, when you go back and look at it, and I'm just excited to see it develop. But like, Penix looked pretty good. Bo Nix, there's a cap on Bo Nix.
But he's definitely an average to above average starter.
Yeah, and it's the perfect situation for him.
Yeah,
with Sean. But the whole group, and now Ben Johnson comes to Chicago, and that's a whole different conversation. They're set up for that kind of success. I'm not saying make a Super Bowl run, but they are set up to be a surprise playoff.
To maybe be a 10-win team.
To be a surprise playoff team next year. From this, from a team that was a game away from having the first overall pick to maybe potentially making a run. Here's the hard part. I just talked about the defense, and Vrabel certainly will have his finger on the pulse and make the final decisions, but he will be pushing towards building a great defense with a
Right.
great young quarterback.
I
And
figure
they
he'll
need-
do the lines, right? He'll be like, let's start with the lines and we'll build
Yep.
out from both sides of the line of scrimmage.
And we'll pluck a receiver here. We'll grab a retread running back there. And we don't need to put a ton of money in that right away unless they go out and get one of the, the top free agents or make a trade at wide receiver. I don't even know that that's going to be their MO, but we'll see. But at the end of the day, like what we saw from Drake May was all you needed to see to be resuscitated as a Patriots fan. Like they have two assets in the entire organization. I said it. It's Drake May and Gonzalez at cornerback.
And Vrabel now. Now we have three assets.
No, I'm saying before the move, before they changed over, like they had two assets, and I was screaming, "Protect your assets! Don't play them in that final game." They should. You and I were texting. They should never have had the coach that game. Gerard Mayo should never have been in that position. But here we are. Now you've got the fourth pick, and it's not all going to come down to the fourth overall pick. If Abdul Carter was to fall to him at 4, it would be, I don't want to say a miracle, but the odds are it's not going to happen.
Right.
They desperately, in my opinion, need one of the quarterbacks to fall to them, Cam Ward or...
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Because right now
Shedeur.
It's a 3-player draft unless Sanders can move up and get people excited and whet people's appetite and make it a 4. Because it seems like Ward's higher than Sanders. And then Carter and Hunter. But right now it's a 3-player draft, drop off. People start arguing who the 4th pick should be, which is bad for the Pats, I think.
Yes and no, because you're sitting there 4. Tennessee has a quarterback need, Cleveland has a quarterback need, and Giants have a quarterback need.
But Tennessee said they're taking the best guy. They said now who knows? That might be posturing, but...
Bill, how long have you been in this game? I'm not saying that they won't, and maybe eventually they will, but since when does a team come out with the
in mid-January
and said if it's a generational talent, we're going to take
okay, that's fair.
That's NFL speak for, hey, come and get the pick. If not, we'll take your guy.
Yeah,
they want out of that pick, just like the Patriots would have wanted out of that pick because they realize there is no Drake May in this class. There's no Jaden Daniels in this class. There's no Caleb Williams in this class, right? So let's try to get out of this pick and let's build it like the rest, like Detroit had built it, like the Eagles have built it, like San Francisco did, like, the Ravens continue to do. All the organizations building on defense and offensive lines, right? And so I think Tennessee's going to try to follow in those footsteps and try to follow the blueprint and try to get out of that pick and get more picks in a draft where, those are the top 3 and they're elite players. But even in recent drafts, you could say there's better at those individual positions. So
but usually the quarterbacks drift up.
And there's
this weird phenomenon that happens, and then all of a sudden you've got 2 guys in the top 4, even though there's been like the Trubisky year was a good example when that happened. The more people stare at the list and the quarterbacks and think about how important the position is, all of a sudden you start looking at the strengths instead of the weaknesses of the guys, and the guys climb up. So I would assume that might happen.
Yeah, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either both the quarterbacks are going to go to one of those 3 spots, and Abdul Carter will go, and then Travis Hunter is your pick at number 4, unless you can move out of that to get additional picks.
Doesn't seem like a Vrabel pick.
It doesn't, right?
They need a left tackle. They have to come out of the draft with a left tackle or a pass rusher, and that's it. Has to be for the Pats. It has to be one of those 2. They need people who can block for Drake May. He's the only asset they have. Other than
so trade back with Vegas at 6 or the Jets at 7. You know what I mean? Or the Saints at 9. And
sure.
And if one of those 2 quarterbacks falls, right?
Yep. That would be the dream scenario.
I think the worst scenario is Cam and Shedeur go in the top 3 picks, and Abdul Carter is gone as well.
And now you're staring at Hunter, who you don't need.
Who's a wonderful, he is a generational type talent, but you're only getting him on one side of the ball for the vast majority, right?
And you have him as a cornerback, right?
I think he's actually a better wide receiver than he is cornerback. But if you're going to try to play him and get value from him on both sides, you better play him as a cornerback and then put in some packages for him,
That's going to be super fun if somebody decides to do that. I'm just glad that player exists because I remember, after college or even during college when I was in college, and Deion had that capability of just coming in and playing series on offense. It was like the most exciting thing.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I looked it up. Like
Wasn't that many plays?
I think he had like 61 receptions his entire career.
Deion did, yeah.
Deion did, and that was the most. Like Champ Bailey had like 6. Charles Woodson had like 2. You know, like so. There's not a history of someone actually being like consistently, that productive.
Yeah. So last year's draft seems like it was almost a unicorn draft. Like the way we're going to look back at it, where there's just star players all throughout the first round. We ended up with 5 starting quarterbacks. We ended up with potentially 2, maybe generational quarterbacks, maybe 3 if Caleb can get his shit going.
Yep.
And then this year's draft.
We haven't seen anything from JJ yet, who's got arguably the best coach to develop him. Yeah.
And then this year's draft, like you look at Cam Ward, you look at Sanders. Where do they go in last year's draft with the tape they have and like the grade they have for this season? Are they in that like Penix Knicks level? Are they JJ level? Are they below Penix? Like where are they?
I think the conversation starts at 4 with JJ.
Okay.
There's no conversation with Caleb, Jaden, or Drake.
Okay.
I think it starts at 4. Most teams had JJ McCarthy as the 4th. Some teams were higher on him than others and believed that he was maybe the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the class. I didn't. I thought he was the 4th best. I think, the interesting part is this. The best pure passer in this draft is Shedeur. Layers the ball placement, good instincts as a passer, processes things real quickly. Doesn't have a great arm. Not a very good. The weird part is he's Coach Prime's son. He's not a great athlete. Like he extends plays, but his instincts in the pocket get him in a lot of trouble. And then you've got Cam, who doesn't. I don't want to say he doesn't process it as quickly, but he's been in these systems where he hasn't had to go through all the reads. I don't think he can get himself out of trouble as a rookie in terms of understanding where to go with the ball. He's not as like consistent with his accuracy. He makes more poor he'll make a play or two a game where you're like, oh no, like Will Levis type shit, right?
Oh no.
Yeah.
The Levis word.
But he's a better athlete than Shedeur. He extends plays, his arm angles, the way he's able to get the ball out. He's got a much better arm than Shedeur. So traits wise, Cam is the guy if you can develop him. But if you're asking compared to last year's class, I think it may go JJ McCarthy 4. And then I would say Cam Ward Penix. And then Shedeur kind of Bo Nix, like in that range.
So if Darnold had been really good down the stretch, and let's say they lost in round 2, but he was good in that game and it wasn't his fault, and it turned into a situation, Minnesota should have re-signed him. They should actually bring him back and trade JJ. That's a smarter move. You think JJ has the kind of talent that you could have traded one of the 4 picks in the top 4 for JJ, and that's a good trade compared to who's in the draft? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it could have happened that way, but I don't know that Minnesota would have even gotten rid of him. I think they would have sat on both. Had he played great down the stretch, it was shaping. I'm actually frustrated because it was shaping up to be one of the most fascinating personnel decisions you could ever make.
Yeah, it was like a poor man's Young versus Montana type of situation, right? Where it's like, what do we do? We have 2 guys.
But the problem is with the salary cap, like you're now preventing your organization from building everywhere else by keeping Sam. But then are you going to gamble? You have this sure thing. If he goes and plays well, like you said, 2 playoff games, they lose, but he threw for 260, 270 and
he's
everything.
27 years old or whatever it is. It's like, all right, we got a guy.
We got our guy. And so that would have been unbelievable to watch. It's amazing what 2 games did to his value, Yeah,
and now he's going to be like Giants, Tennessee.
Yep.
Some sort of stopgap somewhere else. But
it'll be interesting to see how much money he lost too.
That was the most wrong I've been about anything all season. I completely believed by week 17 with the Vikings. I was like, I'm in on this team. I believe in Darnold. This
I
team's
did
going to
too.
beat Detroit.
Why is everyone overlooking him? No one wants to talk about him. I was the same way.
I saw that video of them carrying him, picking him up in the locker room after. I was like, I'm all in. You've won me over. And then he just turned into a pumpkin. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So your mock draft has come in February 10th, your first one?
I think so. That's what we're looking at. Yep.
Not that far away.
No.
We could spoil one thing in the mock draft. Is there a surprise guy for you that you're higher on than everybody else that you feel like you're going to be right and people just don't see it yet? Do you have one of those guys yet?
I don't want to bore you with an offensive tackle, but
let's hear it.
Josh Connerly from Oregon. Okay. Everyone's talked about this Will Campbell guy who's a guard tackle from LSU, and Kelvin Banks, who's a really talented player from Texas. I think Josh Connerly might wind up being the best left tackle. And for some reason,
act like I haven't studied these guys copiously, hoping the Pats are going to take a left tackle. So you have Josh Connerly that high?
I think he's up there. I think he's unbelievably athletic. The way he moves, he's gotten better with his hands. I think he's got a chance to be a star from this class, and I haven't heard or talked to anyone who's quite as high on him as I am. So keep an eye on Connerly.
You weren't high on. Were you high on Cole Strange a couple years ago or no?
Not as high as the Patriots were. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. We traded out of the McDuffie pick and then took him one pick in front of Karlaftis. It was the rare double whammy, Belichick down the stretch. So your dream scenario for the Pats would be somehow move out of that 4 pick, get into the 9 to 11 range, and take Connerly.
Yeah.
You think he goes that high?
Or I think more like, I think he winds up going mid first, but if
mid first,
if people see what I see, then maybe he goes somewhere around 10.
And the receiver class is a disaster this year compared to last year, which was like a pretty historic run of dudes.
We had a historic almost decade of run of wide receivers, like every year.
Yeah.
4 and 5 first round. Almost surefire, like a lot of them, like all those Alabama guys, like, when you look at them, and then Ohio State guys and the LSU guys, like all from like 5 programs, the vast majority. It's not like Tetaroa McMillan from Arizona is really talented, but I don't, I wouldn't put him out. He's not like Jamar Chase, And I see him mocked at like 4 or 5, and I have a hard time going that high on. Luther Burden's a burner, but drops a lot of passes, inconsistent. The best wide receiver in the class is Travis Hunter. And after that, I think there's a lot of guys you like late in the first and second round, but I don't see the value where you're going to have to pick for him. I just don't see.
Last year was nuts. Like, even think like Bowers, who is probably going to be the best tight end of his generation if he doesn't get concussed 17 times because he tries to take on 9 tacklers every time he catches the ball. But that guy's going to be the next guy, it feels like.
Yeah, he is the next guy.
Yeah.
And how about Ladd McConkey?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Pat's traded out of that pick. Pat's took the 10th wide receiver to not receiver draft. It was great. Although, don't you feel like I watched what Washington did, where they got this coaching staff and they overpaid for their assistants, right? They got overqualified dudes and they coach guys up, whereas the Pats went the other way and had a terrible coaching staff. But aren't some of these guys is Polk really like he's just not going to ever be an NFL player? He's not salvageable at all. Can you lose your confidence to that degree? Because he was good last year. Like, nobody thought he was going to be a bust. I don't understand the concept of, can a coach and a coaching staff like resuscitate a guy back to life? Is that even possible?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible, but damage gets done as a rookie. It really does. And it's hard to overcome that. Sometimes it takes a change of scenery, and sometimes that's not even enough. I just look at like what Adam Peters did at Washington, from the hire of Dan Quinn to the coordinators to Jaden was the easiest decision he had to make. How about Mike Sandstrom?
Right.
2 interceptions, drafting him as a rookie.
Yeah. What round was he?
He wound up going second. He was, he wound up going second. Yeah.
Yeah, the Daniels one, I mean, obviously that was a huge topic with the Pats fans wondering because it seemed like there was a stretch there where it seemed like Washington might take Drake May. And then it's like, okay,
Yes.
I'm going to talk myself into Daniels. And he's a little older and he's maybe not durable, but holy shit. And people in my life who love college football and like Van Lathan who loves OSU was like, Daniels is incredible. Like if you guys got Daniels, it'd be a miracle. So you had that.
Well, the conversations I had with a lot of NFL teams was like, you guys in the media are missing. I remember in like about this time last year.
They you guysed you?
You guysed us. Yes.
Oh, no.
You guys me. Yes. Like we're having real conversations and fights in our draft room. Like when we get together on meetings, that we just had a January meeting, like it's a war in our room about Jaden versus Caleb. Wars. And a lot of teams I talked to, at the end, before they saw the product on the field this year, so it's not like, revisionist history, we're like, yeah, we would have taken Jaden.
So now if it's a redraft, is Caleb third on everyone's board or is he second? He's third, you think? I think he is too.
I do.
And probably Daniels has to be first. I mean,
Daniels first, May second, then Caleb. Then
Daniels has won this argument, at least for now. Now he's in this different argument of like, who would you want with the ball with 5 minutes left in a playoff game if it's not Mahomes? Is he Daniels second, third, or fourth?
Is there a fifth quarterback in the NFL that you would take over Jaden? Like I saw that conversation the other day. Like, yeah,
right. Would you rather have Burr or Jay Daniels? Would you rather have Herbert or Jay Daniels? Like, yeah, he's already graduated that.
There is the second year thing. Like Stroud grinded through it, didn't have as much protection, all of that. So they've got to avoid the second time around. Teams having a full off season to study his tendencies. If he gets through his second year and is playing at this level, then we're in the clear. But you
don't worry about him physically at all over the course of 15 years, or is it like a Lamar?
Of course
thing?
I do. Do me a favor at some point when you have a free moment on your hands this week. I think I told Cerruti about this too. You got to go on Twitter. There's just like do a Jaden Daniels Looney Tunes. Someone put together a great reel of him as like
of all the times he just got popped.
And like it's one thing to get popped, but when you're like the way his body parts are just flailing everywhere because he's so lean and long, it's hysterical. It's worth a laugh.
Yeah, because
it concerns me.
We were always worried about Lamar, but Lamar always seemed like he knew how to take a hit. Then some guys just know how to do it.
Jaden pops up so many times. He's so flexible, and that's just who he is. But he hasn't learned that yet. Like who
was bad at that initially was Brady. Brady took smacks his first couple years where he just got, and Drake May last year took like 3 or 4 horrible ones. Brady figured it out.
And, that's the whole thing. It's flexibility. Like that's why like the Brady Quinns and like the guys who are like Tebow's.
Yeah.
I can't. Will Levis.
Yeah.
The dudes who look awesome with their shirt off and look like they can outbench Russillo are the ones I really worry about.
Nobody can outbench Russillo. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know.
Have you seen him lately? He's fucking massive.
Just ask him.
Jesus. Do you think Brady screwed up everything for all of these old quarterbacks going forward, where we decided this was realistic because Tom Brady did it, and now we're just going to have this generation of guys in this Rodgers Cousins stage in their late 30s where they just suck?
Absolutely.
And we're like, no, Tom Brady did it. I really feel like he fooled even me. I picked the Rodgers to, win the AFC East this year. Now it's like, it's really hard to play quarterback when you're 39 and your body's breaking down.
I went to that Patriots-Jets game. I brought my son.
Yeah.
To see him live in person now compared to what he was 2 years ago, the MVP level version of Aaron Rodgers was scary.
Yeah.
And to see Drake May before the concussion and how mobile and in control he was, it was like, oh, so that's next and that's done. That's my 2 takeaways. Like, that's next. That's done.
And yet somebody will probably sign Rodgers, I'm guessing.
Why?
There'll be one more year, I feel like. He's going to be like one of those boxers that needs to get knocked out 2 more times before they finally hang it up.
Yeah, I could see him wanting to. I just don't. Why would you invest that and bring in that?
I'm not saying I would. I just feel like, how many dumb teams do we have? We just watched the Jaguars do 2 weeks of coach interviews and then fire their GM. This is like, 7, 8 just horrifically managed franchises.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think Rodgers could play somewhere.
Oh, I'm not saying he won't. I agree with you. I'm just saying, why would you? With everything that comes with it too, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other piece.